1950s America was a battlefield of jukebox rebellions and radio station gatekeepers where one forbidden song could electrify a whole generation. Midway through our list, a certain doo-wop slow burner nearly got pulled off every airwave, and at the very top, well, one rhythm hit stirred up a storm coast to coast. These are the 10 band tracks that shaped the birth of modern rebellion. Number 10, Shake, Rattle, and Roll by Big Joe Turner. When this powerhouse dropped in 1954 under Atlantic Records, Big Joe Turner was already a blues shouter with a reputation for lighting up late-night stages. But this track, it pushed buttons in every corner of the country. Turner's raw delivery, the thumping backbeat, and those unmistakably suggestive lyrics made program directors sweat behind their consoles.
I said shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle.
Some stations flat out refused to play it, calling it too wild, while others trimmed sections or aired edited versions that barely resembled the original. Behind the scenes, musicians recalled how the studio crackled with electricity the night Turner recorded it, reportedly finishing the take in just a few fiery passes. And listeners felt that spark instantly. Picture a 1954 dance floor, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling, skirts twirling, teens testing the boundaries their parents warned them about. Even with the bands, the song soared, climbing charts, inspiring Bill Haley's Cleaner cover and becoming a cornerstone of early rock and roll. Its pulse reverberates through every rebellious anthem that followed. If this was the sound that made adults nervous, the next track turned their worry into full-blown panic. Number 9, Work With Me, Annie by Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. Released in 1954 on Federal Records, this one didn't just ruffle feathers, it practically set censorship committees on fire. Hank Ballard was in his prime, blending jump blues swagger with a streetwise charm that teenagers adored. But when Work With Me, Annie hit the airwaves, the uproar was immediate. Radio stations from coast to coast called it indecent, provocative, even dangerous. Many banned it outright. What made it so controversial? Legend says the band cut the track late at night in a tiny Cincinnati studio, laughing between takes because they knew they were skating on thin ice. The rhythm was irresistible, the groove contagious, and the lyrics, well, everyone knew exactly what Annie and Hank were up to. Newspapers printed outraged editorials, pastors preached against it, and record stores faced pressure to take it off their shelves. But the public loved it. Kids played it at basement parties, blasted it from parked cars, and memorized every sly line. You can almost imagine the scene. Chrome bumpers glowing under streetlights, transistor radios humming warm static, lovers leaning close as Ballard's voice wrapped around them like heat on a summer night. Despite nationwide bans, the song sold over 1 million copies, proving that controversy only made it stronger. And its legacy? Massive. It spawned sequels. Annie Had a Baby, Annie's Aunt Fanny, influenced generations of R&B storytellers, and marked Hank Ballard as one of the boldest voices in 1950s music. If you thought Annie caused trouble, the next song stirred up a moral debate so intense that senators weighed in. Number 8, Such a Night by Clyde McPhatter and the Drifters. When Clyde McPhatter stepped into the Atlantic Records studio in 1953, he was just beginning to carve out his post-Domino's identity. But the moment he wrapped that honey-smooth tenor around Such a Night, everyone knew they were capturing something electric and a little dangerous. The problem? The song's sensual imagery was far too vivid for the buttoned-up 1950s. Radio stations didn't just hesitate. Many slammed the door shut entirely. Some DJs claimed the track suggested unwholesome behavior. Others insisted it was too passionate, and a few simply refused to explain themselves at all.
Ooh, what a night it was, it really was. Such a night came the dark.
Rumor has it one major station banned it within hours of its first spin after a flood of phone calls from outraged parents. Behind the scenes, McFadden reportedly laughed, saying, "If they think this is bad, they should hear the songs we don't release." Yet, the public couldn't resist it. Picture a drive-in parking lot in 53, moonlight on polished fenders, couples sharing milkshakes, windows rolled down just enough to let that drifter's harmony drift in like warm summer air. It was the kind of song that made young hearts race and rule makers panic. Despite the bans, Such a Night became a word-of-mouth sensation, later covered by Elvis Presley himself, proof that even the king couldn't resist Clyde's spark. And today, its legacy stands tall as one of the earliest R&B records bold enough to blur the line between romance and desire. If this one whispered its rebellion, the next track shouted it from every street corner and sparked outrage far louder than its beat. Number 7, 60-Minute Man by Billy Ward and his Dominoes. Back in 1951, long before rock and roll had a name, 60-Minute Man burst onto the scene like a grenade. Released on Federal Records, it arrived at a moment when America was clinging tightly to its post-war sense of decency. Billy Ward's Dominoes were already one of the hottest vocal groups around, but this track, led by the deep, swaggering voice of bass singer Bill Brown, pushed them into forbidden territory. The controversy was instant.
All night long, I'm a 60-minute man.
Newspapers printed shocked headlines. Parents wrote letters demanding stations ban it, and some cities even tried to block the record from being sold at all. The problem? Brown didn't just hint at intimacy, he bragged about it, boldly, gleefully, and with a wink that teenagers understood instantly. Legend says Bill Brown improvised part of his performance in the studio, leaving the engineers howling with laughter as they rolled tape. Even without consistent radio support, the record exploded. Picture a juke joint on a humid southern night. Neon buzzing, wooden floors vibrating, couples squeezing close as Brown growls out promises no crooner had ever dared to make. It became one of the first R&B hits to cross over onto the pop charts, proving that the public's desire for daring music was stronger than the censor's grip. Its legacy is colossal. Many historians call it a blueprint for early rock and roll swagger. Without 60-Minute Man, the music landscape of the 50s might have been far more timid. If you think that kind of confidence stirred things up, the next song proved that even the gentlest sounding melody can hide a controversy burning just beneath the surface. Number 6, Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. When Little Richard exploded onto the airwaves in 1955 with Tutti Frutti, the world wasn't ready. And that was exactly the point. Cut at J&M Studio in New Orleans for Specialty Records, this track marked the moment Richard went from a struggling musician washing dishes to a wildfire nobody could put out. But beneath all that high-octane joy was a lyrical history so suggestive that the original version had to be rewritten on the spot. Songwriter Dorothy Labastri famously rushed in to help tame Richard's improvised lyrics, which were far too risque for 1950s radio. Even the cleaned-up version had censor sweating. Some stations refused to play it at all, calling it uninhibited, lacking moral restraint, or, my personal favorite, too frantic for respectable company. But listeners knew better. Imagine a crowded diner jukebox in 55, chrome shining, teenagers crowding around in poodle skirts and rolled up sleeves, the opening A-wop bop-a-loo bop, hitting the room like a thunderbolt. It was freedom in 2 minutes and 25 seconds. The song skyrocketed anyway, redefining what performance, energy, and attitude could sound like. It inspired everyone from Elvis to the Beatles, carved Little Richard's name into the bedrock of rock and roll, and opened the door for artists who refused to tone themselves down. And if you think this track shook things up, wait until we reach the final stretch. because the next 5 songs caused storms even Richard couldn't have imagined. If these rebellious 50s records are bringing back memories or teaching you something new, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps keep these forgotten stories alive. And stick around. The final 5 band tracks are the most explosive of all. Number 5, Annie Had a Baby by Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. If Work With Me Annie stirred the pot, its 1954 sequel blew the lid clean off. Released on Federal Records, Annie Had a Baby picked up the story exactly where censors didn't want it to go, and that alone was enough to trigger bands across nearly every major radio market. Hank Ballard was fearless, pushing past the polite boundaries of the era with a wink, a grin, and a rhythm section that refused to behave. Behind the scenes, the group reportedly recorded this one with a mix of pride and mischief, knowing full well they were about to light up the switchboards of every conservative radio station in America. And they were right. DJs wouldn't touch it. Newspapers scolded it. Some regions tried to block its distribution entirely. Yet, fans hunted it down. Record shops whispered when new shipments came in, selling copies straight from under the counter. Imagine the scene. A quiet neighborhood house party, curtains drawn, the turntable spinning as kids gather close to catch every sly lyric. That raw, pulsing rhythm, half blues, half early rock, felt like a secret being passed from hand to hand. It wasn't just a song. It was a rebellious story everyone knew, but no one dared say aloud. Despite the bans, it became a massive hit on the R&B charts, cementing Hank Ballard as one of the most provocative storytellers of the decade. And it proved one truth about the 50s. The more gatekeepers tried to suppress a track, the harder the public embraced it. But if Annie's saga rattled the censors, the next record showed just how furious authorities could get when romance, rhythm, and rebellion collided all at once. Number 4, Honey Hush by Big Joe Turner. Before Shake, Rattle, and Roll, Big Joe Turner unleashed this 1953 firecracker on the Atlantic label, and let's just say radio censors were not amused. Honey Hush came roaring out of the jump blues tradition with a swagger that felt far too untamed for the clean-cut facade America tried to project.
This time I ain't coming back no more. Honey Hush.
Turner wasn't just singing, he was commanding, teasing, laughing his way through a lyric that dared anyone to look away. Rumor has it the session was wild. Turner towering over the mic, musicians in the pocket, the studio shaking with that irresistible boogie-woogie piano. What made it controversial wasn't just the bold language, but the attitude. The song radiated confidence, sexuality, and a kind of grown folks energy that conservative stations wanted nowhere near teenage ears. Some banned it immediately. Others pulled it after just a few spins, claiming it was too rowdy, too suggestive, or too close to inciting misbehavior. But listeners knew a good thing when they heard it. You can almost picture a smoky 1950s bar with neon buzzing in the window, dancers' shoes tapping, glasses clinking, and that bass line rolling like a freight train. It wasn't polished pop. It was real life, real love, and real heat. Despite bans, Honey Hush became a jukebox staple and influenced early rockers who borrowed Turner's swagger for decades. It was the sound of blues evolving into something bigger, louder, and freer. And if this track felt like a party the censors couldn't control, the next one was a quiet storm that sent authorities scrambling for explanations they could barely put into words. Number 3, Love for Sale by Billie Holiday. By the time Billie Holiday recorded Love for Sale in the early 1950s, the song itself had already been causing trouble for over 2 decades. Originally penned by Cole Porter in 1930, it was controversial from the start because it openly dealt with prostitution, a topic most 1950s radio stations pretended didn't exist. But when Lady Day wrapped her weary, blues-kissed voice around it, the song became too real, too human, and far too honest for America's moral gatekeepers. Holiday was no stranger to censorship. Her career had been shaped by battles with police, club owners, and the federal government. But Love for Sale pushed a different kind of button.
Young love for sale.
Unlike earlier, polished versions, Billie sang it from the perspective of a woman who had seen the world's darker corners up close. Censors hated that. They didn't want empathy. They didn't want nuance. They didn't want Holiday giving voice to women whose stories had been kept in shadows. Many stations banned it instantly. Others issued public statements criticizing its subject matter, even though these same stations routinely played songs about heartbreak, betrayal, and barroom desire. The difference? Billie Holiday sang this one too truthfully. Picture a lonely urban nightclub around 1952. Dim lights, a glass half empty on the table, Holiday's voice drifting through cigarette haze like a confession carried on smoke. It wasn't titillation, it was humanity. And maybe that's why it rattled the country so deeply. Though heavily censored, the song endured. Jazz singers kept it alive. Holiday's rendition later became revered as one of the most poignant interpretations ever recorded. Today, its legacy stands as a testament to truth-speaking in a time when truth made people uncomfortable. And if Billie's quiet defiance shook censors at their core, the next song sent them running down hallways demanding it be pulled immediately. Number 2, Black Denim Trousers and Motorcycle Boots by The Cheers. When The Cheers released this Lieber and Stoller penned track in 1955 on Capitol Records, few expected it to become one of the most banned songs of the decade. On the surface, it sounded like a catchy teenage anthem, but beneath the upbeat delivery was a dark narrative about a rebellious biker, a deadly crash, and the tragic romance that followed. For many radio stations, that mix of danger, youth, and fatalism was simply too much.
It hurt 'cause everybody knew he loved that doggone motorcycle bash.
Some markets banned it within days, arguing it glorified reckless behavior. Others worried it would encourage teenage rebellion at a time when juvenile delinquency was America's favorite moral panic. A few even tried to get the record pulled from the stores. Rumor has it that Lieber and Stoller themselves were shocked by the backlash. They saw it as a dramatic story song, part of a long tradition of tragic ballads. The censors, however, heard a menace revving its engine. Listeners felt the pull instantly. Picture 1955 suburbia, drive-ins glowing under fluorescent lights, teenagers huddled around car radios, the distant hum of real motorcycles rolling down lonely streets. That tension between freedom and danger gave the track a raw emotional charge. For the first time, music wasn't just about dancing or falling in love. It was about the risks young people took to feel alive. Despite the bans, the song climbed the charts and inspired countless later teen tragedy hits in the late 50s and early 60s. It became an unlikely blueprint for a whole subgenre built on drama and danger. But if this leather-clad tale rattled the nation, nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared America for the musical shockwave waiting at number 1. Number 1, Hound Dog by Elvis Presley. When Elvis Presley unleashed Hound Dog on national television in 1956, America practically split in half. Though originally recorded by Big Mama Thornton in 1952, Presley's version, cut at RCA Victor's Nashville studio, took the song from blues heat to full-on cultural explosion. And with that explosion came panic. Not mild concern, not raised eyebrows, panic.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying.
The issue wasn't the lyrics. They were actually tamer than many R&B songs already circulating. What terrified censors was Elvis himself. The way he moved, the way he growled the words, the way teenage girls screamed at the mere sight of him. Within days, certain TV networks refused to film him from the waist down, while some radio stations banned the track entirely, calling it vulgar, animalistic, and a threat to American youth. Newspapers labeled him everything from immoral to dangerous. Preachers denounced him by name. Behind the scenes, Presley laughed it off. Musicians recalled how he tore into the song with pure joy, pushing the session band to match his lightning energy. And listeners felt that energy instantly. Picture a 1956 living room, a black and white TV glowing in the corner, kids glued to the screen, parents watching from behind crossed arms as Elvis sent shockwaves through post-war America. It wasn't just music anymore, it was movement, rebellion, and the birth of a new cultural force. Despite bans, Hound Dog became one of the biggest hits of the decade, spending 11 weeks atop the charts. Its legacy, endless. It changed performance forever, supercharged the rise of rock and roll, and challenged every old rule about who controlled youth culture. And that's what makes it the most controversial banned song of the 1950s. The record that didn't just start trouble, it changed the world. From blues bravado to rock and roll revolution, these banned tracks remind us that the 1950s weren't as quiet as they seemed. Thanks for taking this stroll through music history with me. If you enjoyed this countdown, subscribe to keep the groove alive and never miss the next deep dive. And on the end screen, go ahead and click our follow-up video on 10 most controversial banned songs of the 1960s. Let's keep the rhythm rolling.